నమస్కారం. నా ఈ ప్రయత్నం మీకు నచ్చినట్లయితే గనక మన ఛానల్‌ని సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకొని పే జాబితాలోని మరిన్ని వీడియోలను చూడటం ద్వారా మీ నైపుణ్యాలను, జ్ఞానాన్ని కూడా అభివృద్ధి చేసుకోవడానికి ప్రయత్నించండి. జై హింద్. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.
This gambit, we had a look at what happened if black accepted the gambit. Now, just so you're fully covered, we should also have a look at any other options that black might try to play against you. So this is really this video and the next one, the Evans gambit declined. And I really don't think, let's do the opening moves after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now the repertoire that I'm suggesting to you for this spicy gambit range of interesting openings, bishop c4, and I'm recommending this move because it hits that Achilles heel straight away and you get more exciting positions with this move, in my opinion, rather than the more commonly played move bishop b5, which leads to more maneuvering games. But after bishop c4, black has two main options. We've already covered knight to f6 in some previous videos on the Max Lang attack. So bishop c5 now invites the Evans gambit with b4. And like I mentioned, the first three videos in this range really concentrated on the main move for black, bishop takes b4. Now, I have to say, at club level, you might get a lot of players not wanting to take that pawn, because I often find, that players get a bit scared about accepting a gambit. They start quivering. Oh no, I'm not going to take a pawn. They're going to have some horrible trick set up against me. So they might try to find a safe way to play that gets them into a position they're reasonably comfortable with. And the game we're going to look at now, the first game, is going to demonstrate that this is still very dangerous for black. If black tries to play solidly without any action, without any excitement, he can get himself into a lot of trouble still. And the first game is between one of the greatest chess players of all time, Garry Kasparov, with the white pieces. And just the fact that Garry played this opening shows you that he treats it seriously, and it is not just a dubious opening. Garry never played openings that he thought were just bad. He would have to have faith in the openings he played, especially against one of the strongest Dutch players of all time, Jerome Pickett, who has given up chess now, but he was an incredibly strong player in the 90s when this game was played. So if you're not going to take the pawn on b4 with black, what are you going to play? Well, there's only really one option, and that is bishop b6. This is really the only move to get concerned about here, because any other bishop move doesn't really make any sense. I mean, if the bishop starts retreating somewhere like bishop e7, well, it's already been an advantage to white to gain some space on the queen side, and the bishop's very passive here. I mean, you can even play a move just like c3 if you want, something like this. Now, one thing I think it's worth bearing in mind, let's say after bishop b6, which is the best move, because look, the bishop's much more active on this diagonal, is not to push on with the move b5 too quickly. Because if you do push on with this move, there are problems with knight to a5. And I only try to play b5 when black has played a5, because then the knight cannot come to that square. And here, something like knight to a5, okay, this is quite an interesting option, is leading to quite good position for black. I'm not going to go into the complications that arise after knight takes pawn, because it's not relevant. All you have to know is that pushing this pawn onto b5 is not the way to play until black has played a5 himself, so his knight can't move there. So let's just generalize, I think that's just the rule to keep things simple, that just to bear in mind. So the best move here, in my opinion, is to keep charging on the queen side. And this is what Garry played, a4. And already you can see that this pawn on b4 has given white some very dangerous threats. For example, a5 will trap the bishop The bishop goes to d4, c3, and that bishop will be lost. You can win a piece. And if black ever tries knight takes b4, one thing in the Evans Gambit you should know is that knight takes b4 is rarely a good move because of simply knight takes e5 now. And black can't eliminate this bishop on c4 now, so there's a major problem on f7. So after the move a4, black has two options. Now in this game, we're going to concentrate on what I think is really the most logical option, and that is a5, stopping white from winning that piece. In the next game, we'll have a brief look at what happens if black plays a6, a bit more restrained approach. Now after a5, following the rule I mentioned a minute ago, you can now play b5. This is now an okay move to play. And the point here is that the knight can't go to this square, can't go to a5. So black logically moves the knight into the center of the board. And now you've got to be a little bit careful, because if you get greedy, remember, when you're playing the Evans Gambit, don't get greedy. You're playing a gambit in order to attack, to develop quickly, not to grab material. And whenever your opponent offers you a pawn, you should think twice. I mean, here, the best move is knight takes knight. Now, if you do try to grab the pawn on e5, you can run into a well-known trick here. This is another thing you really have to be aware of. This is actually an incredibly bad move, knight takes e5. Why is this a bad move? Well, there's a really nasty trick with queen g5, and this occurs in other openings. It's something that you should be aware of. It's a good trick for black, and it's something that can create disaster here for white. And the problem here is that black is threatening the knight and the pawn on g2. So white should probably, well, let's say try knight takes f7, but this is going to be absolutely horrible. Why? Because of queen takes g2, attacking the rook on h1, and really white has to try moving that rook, and there's only one square to go to, rook f1, and now black can either win the queen, win the white queen, or force checkmate with a very nice checkmate. Queen takes e4 check. If the queen blocks, you win the queen, and if the bishop blocks, look at this. This is something I don't want anyone to fall into. Knight to f3. Oh my words. That is a suffocation, mate. That's like being strangled in your bed there. Someone's got their hands around your throat and you can't escape there. I mean, that's also the way I would certainly feel if I lost in 10 moves like that in a game. I would be feeling very red-faced. So the thing to remember, let's just go back, is that after this a5 move, you do play b5. But after knight d4, just take that knight off the board. Very simple. Knight takes knight. Now, black here doesn't want to take with the pawn, because that will cause him some damage to his structure, and his bishop will be blocked in by that pawn. So bishop takes d4 is what Jerome played, and now c3. A very typical idea in the Evans Gambit. This achieves two goals. Number one, you want to go d4, and also queen b3. And even though black has declined this gambit, we can still get some very aggressive positions. Bishop b6, d4. Of course, the typical Evans Gambit move. One of the reasons you play b4 is to go c3 and d4. And now after pawn takes d4, this is a bit like the first three videos we looked at when black takes on the gambit. The best move here is not even to take that pawn back. Well, you could play that, but Gary just decided to develop with speed, not caring about his pieces. Castling kingside, or should I say, not caring about his pawns. And this is offering another pawn, but if black takes on c3, white would quickly get a very dangerous initiative. Knight takes c3. This knight has a fantastic square on d5. And if something like knight to f6, we have e5. And if knight to e7, well, as we're going to see in the game, this can often be met by a very nasty move, bishop g5. And already black is in lots of trouble with a knight coming to d5. It's a really nasty position for black to play. So in the game, black decided to go knight e7 first, trying to get castle quickly. And here Gary played with such energy. Another reason I like this game, this was Gary at his best. This was him, he kept attacking. He was one of the best, probably the best player in the world with the initiative. whenever you gave Gary a slight initiative, he could use that so well. And here, he didn't even take this pawn back on d4, because if he did, I think Black's plan was d5. And if Black can play d5, he gets his own stake in the center of the board. So Gary played bishop g5, a fantastic move, because now if d5, we can simply go bishop takes d5. So really just pinning, attacking, developing with speed. h6 was played, and now again Gary did not want to lose any time, so he took on e7. Queen takes e7, and now he took on d4. And Black can no longer play the move d5. If he does, he loses a pawn. He can't take on e4 because rook e1 would lose the queen. And this is where Black went a bit wrong. He should have castled here instead of playing the move in the game queen d6. He should have castled when, after a move like knight c3, I certainly prefer white. White has more space. The opening has been a success. But at least you're not going to get checkmated here quickly with Black. But these two pawns in the centre should always give white the advantage. The move played, queen d6, was an incredibly greedy move, just trying to win this pawn, but neglecting the development of the bishop, neglecting the king's safety, and neglecting the rook on a8. So not a good idea against one of the best attackers in the world. So now Gary just developed again, knight c3. You can't win a game often without getting all your pieces in the game. Develop, develop, develop. And the point of this move is, well, we give away the pawn. Bishop takes d4 was played. If queen takes d4, there's a couple of annoying moves here. Maybe queen b3 and rook d1 with a very good initiative. But Gary Kasparov also noted that knight d5 was a very interesting option. An exchange of queens here, even though Black's a pawn up, would be really horrible because the knight is going to take on d6 and Black will never get the queenside pieces out. Have a look at that yourselves if you want. And if Black takes on c4, well, then there is a problem with rook c1. And now the Black queen has not many squares to go to. Queen to a2. And now knight takes b6. And even though white is a piece and a pawn down, after queen at d6, Black is in a cage. He can't move his king, his bishop, or either of his rooks. He has to try queen e6. And now, after the move e5, you get a very amusing position. Queen takes queen, pawn takes queen. And look at this. Look at these pieces on the queen side. These are completely powerless. And even though, again, Black is a piece and a pawn up, he's probably completely lost here. Because he can never get these pieces out. A very amusing position. For example, king d8, rook e1, rook e8. And this is one of the only cases where, when you're a piece down, you can swap off into an ending. You take pieces off, go rook e1 check, and it's game over. Because Black can only move his king. Really weird position. So that was a very nice line given by Gary. I mean, very, very amusing position. Basically, white is playing a rook up here. And Black is paralysed. And this is the kind of thing that, of course, Gary could see. And that's why he's one of the best players in the world. So let's go back. In the game, knight c3 was played. Bishop takes d4. And now knight d5. Sacrificing the rook. Sacrificing the exchange. But after bishop takes, queen takes, white's pieces are so much better developed. Of course, Black should castle, which he did. And now, when you get a position like this, when you have given up material, you need to create threats. You need to play with energy. You can't play slow moves anymore. You need to attack, attack, attack. So how do you create threats here? First, e5, attacking the queen. Good way to start. The queen has to move. Queen c5. How do you create another threat? Pause the video if you need to. Rook c1, bringing the last piece into the game. And this has a very crafty idea of taking on c7 and taking on f7. For example, here, if something like b6, well, knight takes c7 is one of the ideas behind this rook move. Queen takes c7, bishop takes pawn check. Let's say rook takes, and now rook takes c7. And again, we get a similar situation to that amusing position I just showed you, where Black can't move these pieces here. So this is a threat, and Gary playing at his best here. c6 was played, and now Gary noticed the black queen was lacking squares, so he played bishop a2, attacking the queen. The queen only has one square to go to, and that is really, I mean, it can't go to somewhere like a7, because if it goes to a7, you're asking for b6, queen b8, knight c7. And again, look at the ridiculous placement of these pieces. This is, again, one of those situations where it doesn't matter that black is material up, because he can't move anything. He's paralyzed. Really nice game, this one. So after bishop a2, he tried queen a3, but now knight b6 wins material, because white is threatening the rook and threatening bishop takes f7 check, winning the queen. So black tried d5, stopping the threat of bishop takes f7, but after knight takes a8, eventually white now goes a piece up. And he won the game comfortably after king h8, knight b6, bishop e6, only 2 pawns for the piece, not enough, and white is still very active. The black queen is still in trouble. h3, just a little safety first move. Rook d8, hoping to try to throw Derek the d pawn down, but after pawn takes c6 and rook c3, pushing that queen away, queen b4, rook takes c6, rook b1, knight takes d5, white is now a piece and a pawn up, and it's clear that after queen takes a4, rook c1, just defending any tactical tricks here, that white is just completely winning. There are a couple more moves, queen a3, bishop c4, and that was the end of the game. Black had enough because white has stabilized his extra piece here, and he's just a clear piece up. But I really liked that game. It was a nice attacking game from Kasparov, and it shows you the dangers that black can face. If he tries to get a passive position against the Evans Gambit, things are not going to be that passive if you play like Gary here. Let's just have a look at the opening idea again. So b4, the Evans Gambit offered, bishop b6, and now the best move a4, and against a5, because there is a pawn on a5, you should play b5, forcing that knight somewhere. It can't go to a5 anymore, and if knight d4, we don't take the pawn on e5, we take the knight off the board, and we get a big centre with c3 and d4, leading to some very nice attacking positions. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. There's only going to be one more video in this series on the Evans Gambit, and then you should be ready to give it a go. And I wish you the best of luck